All right, so we are finally getting to look at a little bit of what Joe Biden's official budget proposal is going to be. And listen, I didn't really have big expectations for the Joe Biden presidency. I basically anticipated him to be a Mitt Romney, moderate Republican style president, and he basically has been. Even though the media has been covering him as the next big, bold, progressive FDR, he hasn't been anything close, okay? He hasn't structurally changed anything about our economy. He gave people one-time checks that were lower than what he promised, and all the stuff that was in that $1.9 trillion COVID relief package was temporary, so it's just a one shot of adrenaline, nothing structural changed. And as he's putting forward this budget proposal, it looks like not only is he not willing to be the next FDR and be a progressive, but he's not even willing to stick to his own campaign promises and some of the major ones that he made. So here are some of the details that we're getting. Progressives are fuming in response to reports that President Joe Biden's forthcoming official budget proposal will not include a public option, drug pricing reform, student debt cancellation, or an estate tax increase. So as a candidate, Joe Biden said that he would enact a public option to create a government-run alternative to private health insurance plans, reduce the sky-high and life-threatening prices of prescription drugs, cancel up to $10,000 of student loan debt per federal borrower, and raise the estate tax, which only affects the wealthiest 0.2% of U.S. households. And now it appears like he is not going to be including any of that in his budget proposal. So this doesn't make sense from literally any perspective, okay? The drug pricing. All right, the United States is the only country in the developed world that allows private drug companies to do this, okay? Even in other countries where they do have some private drug manufacturers and distributors, those countries' governments not even negotiate, make demands of those private big pharmaceutical companies and say, no, you're not going to get to price gouge our constituents whatever you want. Okay, maybe they let them profit a little bit, which again, I disagree with. I think we should nationalize big pharma completely and take the profit motive out of the picture. But even if you're going to take that middle ground approach, at least negotiate and make demands with these pharmaceutical companies so that Americans are not having to pay 100%, 1,000%, 10,000% markup prices compared to the rest of the developed world for the same goddamn drug prices. This is why Americans have to cross the border and go to Canada to get insulin. Okay, this is a ridiculous, absurd, immoral system that we have here where we are prioritizing big pharmaceutical profits literally at the expense of tens of thousands, countless American lives, and sending people into bankruptcy for life-saving medication that they need. So he's not willing to confront the big pharmaceutical companies. That much was clear from the beginning, okay? We know who Joe Biden is. He's corrupt. He takes donations, which are essentially bribes from these big pharmaceutical companies, and he operates in accordance with whatever they want. Now, on the healthcare side of this, that side is even more egregious to me, and it's the thing that stands out the most. Because when we were going through the Democratic primary, the media, the establishment, Joe Biden, they were all talking about Bernie Sanders and Medicare for All as, oh, you progressives, you just don't understand. You just don't understand the legislative process. You guys are just naive, okay? Medicare for All would have no chance of passing, but the public option, well, that's the sensible centrist alternative, right? That's something that we can actually rally the party behind, right? That's something that people actually vote for. Not only are we not going to get a vote on the public option, Joe Biden has not even talked about the public option throughout his entire presidency so far. Have you heard him mention the public option a single time since he's been elected? I haven't. I haven't heard him talk about it at all. And so he's not even willing to go to the mat for this. I wouldn't even call it a compromise. Medicare for All is the compromise. Okay, the alternative is a national health system like they have over in the UK. The alternative is a single-payer insurance system like Medicare for All. And the public option was a pathetic alternative, but at least it was something, right? At least it was Joe Biden pretending like he cared about Americans being bankrupted, right? 500,000 Americans go bankrupt every year due to medical debt. At least he pretended to care about the tens of thousands of Americans that die every year due to medical debt, right? The tens of millions of Americans that are completely uninsured. Okay? No, he doesn't care about that. Not only does he not care about it, he doesn't even want to pretend to care about it by fighting for it in any way, shape, or form. So it was a bullshit narrative from the beginning that there was some sort of sensible alternative to Medicare for All. Medicare for All is the solution on the table. Okay? That's the legislative solution. The overwhelming majority of the American people, and especially Democrats, support it. There's no excuse for Democrats to not be fighting for that whatsoever. They are simply corrupt, and they're taking bribes from the health insurance industry in order to oppose that legislation. So on that front, this is ridiculous. And then on the student debt, okay, this is the simplest issue because this would not even take any effort from Joe Biden. All he has to do is do it, okay? He has the executive authority to cancel 100% of student loan debt, federally owned student loan debt. He has the authority unilaterally, without the approval of Congress, to do that by himself. It would take a couple strokes of the pen, calling the right people, and making it happen. That's all it would take. And so not only is he not willing to do the $50,000 student loan debt cancellation, which was the compromise that was proposed by, I think it was Elizabeth Warren, not only is he not willing to do the $50,000, he's not even apparently willing to do the $10,000 that he promised, which was a pathetic compromise, if you can even call it that. So he's not willing to even do the $10,000. This guy has the ability to unburden tens of millions of Americans for the crime of getting an education. They are in debt because they got a higher education. Not only does he not want to cancel any of that or give them any relief, but he's just a pro-debt president. What else do you call this? Joe Biden is pro-student debt. He likes the fact that tens of millions of Americans are burdened potentially for the rest of their lives with debt that prevents them from taking other actions in their life, like buying a home, like having children, like building an actual life for themselves. He wants to maintain that system in place instead of using the authority that he has, the power that he has at his disposal in order to give relief to tens of millions of Americans. So on all of these different fronts of what he's not willing to include on this, he's wrong on the policy, he's wrong on the substance. But he's corrupt as fuck. We know who Joe Biden is. Of course, that shouldn't be too unexpected. But even from the perspective of the economics of it, it doesn't make sense. Even from the perspective of the electoral strategy, it doesn't make sense. And as accurately pointed out here by Branko Marcetic, I think that's how it's pronounced, if the aim is to avoid a midterm massacre, as typically happens with the governing party that is in charge, usually when you win the presidential election, then the next round, your Congress is going to be voted out. So if the goal is to avoid a midterm massacre, why would you do this? The aim should be to get all the constituencies that brought you to power to stay energized, but young people aren't going to turn out in the 2020 numbers without a raging pandemic and Trump on the ballot. So that's 100% accurate. All these young people sucked it up and showed out to vote for Joe Biden because he made these campaign promises, like canceling student debt, right? Like doing a public option, okay? He made these promises to those people. They went out and they voted for him in massive numbers, okay? And now he's turning around and completely backstabbing them. He's turning around and completely abandoning the American people that voted for him for these promises. And that's going to lead to a slaughter in 2022. I don't see any way around it. You have to, when you take power, actually do something with it. You have to stick to your promises. And a lot of this stuff wouldn't even be difficult to fight for. Like the student debt cancellation is a perfect example. He doesn't even really have to fight for anything. He would just have to do it. He would just have to decide that that's something worth doing. And it absolutely would be. Again, not just from the moral perspective of why the fuck should anybody be going deep into debt for the crime of getting an education, but from an economic perspective. That means you're freeing up tens of millions of people to then go participate in the economy instead of having to pay down debts to the federal government. It makes sense from an economic perspective. It makes sense from a moral perspective. It makes sense from a political perspective. So none of what Joe Biden is doing here makes any sense. Okay? He's a corrupt motherfucker. We know exactly who he is. He's taking donations from all of these industries that have a vested interest in stopping these good ideas from actually being followed through with legislation. And this is where he's at right now. So I would anticipate Democrats, if they follow through on this tendency, are going to get slaughtered in the 2022 midterms. And this is what we're going to have to deal with. Right? Joe Biden completely abandoning his campaign promises. So when the next time we have a Democratic primary, the next time these same arguments are trolled out about how, Medicare for all, it's not realistic. Oh, these progressive priorities are not realistic. Understand, the compromises that they put forward are bullshit. Okay? They don't intend to fight for them. They don't want to structurally change anything about the system. And this is pretty clear from this evidence. So listen, this is where Joe Biden's at right now. It's absolutely pathetic. There's no excuses for it. The squad, everyone else needs to be chiming the fuck up right now because this budget proposal is not even what he ran on, let alone including progressive priorities that we should be fighting for. But this is unacceptable. It's completely unacceptable. Do the easy things, cancel student debt, fight for a public option if that's what you believe in, but he doesn't. All right, he doesn't believe in anything. He's an austerity hawk, and he's not even willing to follow through on the basic promises that he made to the millions of people who showed up and voted for him and now won't in 2022 because of these broken promises.